explain briefly what TEDx is. TEDx is a nonprofit organization with a focus on empowering voices and letting ideas spread. I am hosting a TEDx youth event, which is what this is, and it's inspiring students to come and speak up for themselves, as well as students giving heartfelt talks. And we hope to inspire more students and more communities like this to talk in the future. Before we begin the show, I request that everyone kindly silence their cell phones and refrain from talking during the presentation. Our team has worked very hard in these last few months in order to organize these events, and I know all of the speakers have spent countless hours in order to perfect their own speeches. So I would like everyone's undivided attention, please. So with that, I'd like to begin with our first speaker, Allison Hyatt. Please come up. She's a lawyer who I had the pleasure of hearing her speech during an event that I went to not long ago. She speaks about her inspiration for her own career and how students can become inspired and can learn from her example in order to achieve their own dreams and their own careers. So please give a round of applause.
Hi, thank you for having me here today. I've sat in this room and listened to my son's coaches speak for different events here. I have 3 children, and I'm excited to be here talking with you today. All of my kids will go to Roblin High School. My daughter is currently here a senior at Roblin High School. She is over in the dance showcase that's going on in the theater right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my daughter, Faith, and how she's inspired me in my career. But my family and I, we moved to Rockland about 15 years ago. My daughter, as I said, she's a senior here. My son graduated from here in 2023. And then I have another son who's going to be a freshman here next year. So I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law now for going on 24 years. I am a partner and a practice group leader at a law firm headquartered here in Roseville. I've been with them for about a little over 5 years. And my primary practice right now includes representing employers and businesses in lawsuits brought by former employees or current employees. So employment litigation is my specialty. I've done a lot of things along the way, but this is where I've ended up with a great set of partners in an excellent law firm that is growing and I've been able to grow with. I also have a second specialty, which is representing individuals with disabilities and their families. It's special education law and disability rights cases. This is inspired by my daughter, Faith. She has Down syndrome. And when she was born, I was all of a sudden thrust into this world of a community of different individuals and parents who have students with disabilities, children with disabilities. And I quickly saw how much they had to fight for equal access to educational services and their accommodations and for all those types of things that they're supposed to be provided under federal and state law. So in addition to my practice, which I was already a lawyer at the time, I started dabbling in special education law. And I have a few notes here just so I don't get too off with my beat. So Faith is thriving here at Rockland High School, which is amazing. The great administration here, amazing set of teachers and resources. She has been included ever since she was in kindergarten in every aspect of her education and general education. She also received special education services. And it's evidenced here by the fact that she's participating in the dance showcase. They've had rehearsals. They have 4 separate shows that they're doing throughout the week. She's doing all of that independently. She's learned all of the routines. And she's supported by great teachers and aide and amazing students here at Rockland High School who have embraced her and have been just great friends with her. And so I'm so thankful to be a part of this community here. I'm in the process of setting up a nonprofit organization in addition to my regular practice. It's supported by my counselors and my law firm. It's called the Center for Educational Rights. And I hope to potentially recruit other attorneys and advocates to volunteer their time and resources to helping families and students with disabilities in this area of law. So that's kind of my side passion. And I'll be honest that I never could have envisioned my wife here today. I'm 49. I know you're all not just thinking that happens. Still look at you. If you're not thinking that, then I'm just going to pretend that you. But a minute. So thinking about back when I was at the age of many of these students here in this room, all I knew was that I wanted to go to college and I wanted to have a job that would allow me to be financially independent. So I thought I didn't have a whole lot of influence, female career women in my life at the time. I only used some of my Vancouver teachers. My parents are amazing. My mom ran an in-home daycare in our house so that she could be home with us after school. So there were kids in our house. My mom always played the violin, and she played in the symphony orchestra in the evenings. She ran an in-home daycare, and she would practice when all the kids would go take their naps. She'd practice in our kitchen. So I listened and watched her doing that, all of her hard work. But I knew that I wanted to have some kind of job where I didn't have to rely on my parents. I didn't have to rely on a partner, a boyfriend, husband. I could take care of myself and pursue my dreams and be financially independent. Sounds kind of interesting, but that was really what my goal was. So, in the game of life, they have like the different professions, and like the ones that made the most money, like a doctor or a lawyer. So I just thought, well, pick one of those. No, I didn't want to be a doctor, so I thought, well, I'll pursue law. No, really, I met one woman in my life that had gone to law school later in life, and she became a lawyer. And I thought, well, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. So it's ironic that with that mindset, I met my husband when I was in high school, and we ended up going to college together, and now have been together for 30 years, 26 years married. And he's still my best friend and my biggest supporter. We certainly have made life decisions to be together and stay together. But I told him on one of our first dates when I was out of high school that I wanted to go to law school and be a lawyer. And I was prepared for him to say, that's a lot to the wall. Like, how are you going to do that? But instead, he said, that sounds cool, right? So at the time, out of law school, I was attending Orange Coast College down in Costa Mesa, California. And even though I was an honor student in high school, I got good grades. I was in extracurricular activities. My parents are wonderful, and they provided for everything I needed, but there was just no extra money to pay for college at all. So they didn't think any reason why I wouldn't go to a junior college, a community college, and complete all of my general ed requirements. And then I could go on to a four-year university and get my bachelor's degree. I didn't see why we would pay more to general ed requirements that could be done at a community college. So I'll be honest, I kind of resented him for that, because I was in with a group of students in high school that were going off to different colleges. I desperately wanted that experience to go away to college and listening to all of them talk and their excitement. I kind of resented my parents for that. I was in honors classes and extracurricular activities. I grew up playing the violin. And I know now that I could have pursued scholarships and financially, but at the time, that just wasn't in my wheelhouse. I didn't have the support to make that happen. So I resolved to go to community college, but just long enough to complete all of my gen ed classes that I needed. And then I was going to transfer to a four-year university. Thankfully, I lived in Southern California, close to both the Cal State Long Beach and Cal State Fullerton. Colleges I could go to and live at home. And that were also fairly inexpensive at the time. Like, Cal State Long Beach tuition when I went there was $978 a semester. That's what it means. So I don't even know what it is now, but I'm sure it's not bad. So Long Beach State was a great school. It made sense to just live at home and go there after I finished my credits at Launch Post College. I didn't want to incur student debt if I didn't have to. So in high school, I ended up getting good grades, but I knew that I was going to kind of have to go to community college. So I'll be honest, I didn't totally try my best in high school. Nowadays, it seems like there's so many weighted classes. They didn't really have as many of those back then. So I think I graduated with like a 3.85. I get some U's. I was just kind of okay with that. I was really a talker, and I was kind of goofy. And I would like chat with my friends during class, always. I'd be honest, I used to get kicked out of class at times for being too chatty with my girlfriends. And thankfully, they never called my parents and told them, so I would have been in big trouble for getting kicked out of class. I enjoy socializing and giggling and doing all that. But then when it came to going on to college, I had to think, what was I going to do? I wasn't getting what I wanted, was just to go away to college and have that experience. So I had to learn early on the concept of being resilient. And if you take anything away from my talk today, I hope that you'll remember how important it is to be resilient in life. Resilience is the concept of bouncing back from adversity. It has to do with successfully adapting to and overcoming challenges rather than simply enduring them. Resilient individuals learn from experiences and use them as an opportunity for growth and development. It's important to understand that resilience is not an innate trait. It's a learned trait. You don't learn to be resilient by having everything handed to you and having it easy in life. So I was faced with not getting what I wanted, going away to college. So I decided that if my parents were going to make me live at home and attend community college, I was going to show them, and I was going to get straight A's. That was my rebellion. So I'd have the best opportunity for scholarships and getting into a good law school. So that's what I did. I took every class seriously at Orange Coast College. I gave my very best. I showed up for every class, which is so important in college. I did the reading before class, and I wrote up notes about the lecture afterwards. I got to know my professors, and I found that by putting in my best effort in college, which I didn't totally do in high school, that it was actually enjoyable. I did get straight A's in college. I was also working part-time. I was saving every dollar I could make so that I could eventually achieve this goal of being financially independent, getting into a good law school. I had this catalog of classes. So back then we didn't really have the internet. No, this is 1985, 1996. I graduated from high school in 1994. So I had a big catalog, and then I had a list of all these classes I needed to take to transfer to a four-year university. That I would take them, and I would just check it off my list. And I managed to complete all my requirements by taking continuous semester in just 3 semesters. And then I transferred to Long Beach State. I originally thought I wanted to be a criminal lawyer and go into criminal law. So I majored in criminal justice. I was on this idea of maybe being in the FBI. But then I found out lawyers mean ward that FBI question. My husband, at the time, was my boyfriend. He actually was in the criminal justice program with me at Long Beach State. He went on to become a special agent. I went on to law school. I did well at Long Beach State, and I got into UCLA Law School. It was really amazing at the time. But it's also a UC school, so of all the law schools to go to a top-tier law school at that class of the California residents was really awesome. I did end up taking out some student loans to help me pay for law school. I also literally got a big book of scholarships. Again, the internet wasn't like it is now, so it's a big old thick book. And I poured through that book all the scholarships I could potentially get. And I found a scholarship for women in academia who have an interest in golf. And I was like, I have a boyfriend who plays golf, and he's pretty cute. So, I had played golf a few times, and it didn't say you had to really play golf. It's just like women in academia have an interest in golf. So I applied for this scholarship. I really just had to go and chat up a bunch of ladies at the Women's Southern California Golf Association, and it paid for an entire year of law school. So, you never know what you're going to find in all of those books, or now you can look online for scholarships. There's so many different ones out there. At that time, they just didn't have very many women who played golf, so they kind of expanded it. I know girls' sports is so much more organized and so much more opportunities now, so I think it's a little different. But I'll just say, when I got to law school, I went from being top of my class at Long Beach State, getting straight A's, to being suddenly immersed into a world of law students who were all top of their class from all over the country, all over the world. Kids who had parents who had been lawyers, judges. They seemed to arrive at law school already knowing a lot about the law and a lot about law school and how it worked. I had no idea. I felt very out of place. I felt like I was out of my league. I got my first C's of my college career in law school because they grade on a curve. So guaranteed 20% of all the students are going to get C's in your classroom. You're competing against your peers. I didn't really understand that when I started. So it was a shock to my system. And it kind of rocked me my first year of law school, and I did not do as well as I thought I was going to. So again, that concept of resilience. I could have given up. I could have thought, this is too hard. Maybe this is not for me. But I thought, I'm here. I worked hard to get here. I'm going to do my best. So I got connected with all the resources. They had some in law school, the professors that would help you after class. I sought out help. I did extra reading. I did everything I needed to do to, kind of get up to speed with where everybody else seemed to be. I joined clubs. I got connected with other professors and lawyers. And second and third year, I did really well in law school. And at the time, they would have on-campus interviews. So law firms came and recruited from UCLA Law School. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't even know if I'm have an interview. I feel like totally out of my league with these big law firms that were coming on. So I thought, well, you know what? They're just people. So I just thought, I'll just chat them up, which I was good at. Like I said, I was chatty in high school, and I got kicked out, but that meant I could still talk to people. So lo and behold, I got an offer from a really big law firm right out of law school. They paid for me to take the bar. They paid me to study to take the bar. And right out of law school, this was back in 2001 when I graduated, my starting salary, I must tell you this, was $125,000 a year. Out of law school, my very first job. The only other job I had before that was making a little over minimum wage in college. So it was huge. And when I got there to that law firm, and it was just like in the movies, like the movie The Firm, those types of things, I was making big money, and I was a brand new associate, and they just counted on at least 30% of us new associates to just wash out and not be able to handle it. That's what happened. Like, so. And I just thought, I'll be damned if I'm going to wash out. Like, I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to get to know people, get to know the partners. And sure enough, I ended up staying at that first law firm for 10 years. I was down in Central City in Los Angeles. I learned so much about being a lawyer. I got to go to trial my second year as a lawyer. This was a trial where we represented a concert promoter who was suing Michael Jackson of all people, who did not do public concerts he was supposed to do. So I'd have to be in the trial, in the courtroom when Michael Jackson testified. And that was just such a huge experience. Moved on from there. I eventually became a partner in a national law firm before I joined the firm that I'm at now. Because of all of my experience and sticking with things that I had started off with, I've been really successful in my legal career. And as I said, now I'm able to take my my talents and what I've learned to bring it into the community with this nonprofit I'm starting. It's kind of the next phase of my legal career, and hopefully get that moving and be able to help meet people with that legal advocacy skills. So that's kind of my story. I hope it was very nice speaking with you guys today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for those of you who are coming here today. Thank you for all those who put it together. You managed to get me into a suit for the first time in probably 5 years. So there are perks to being a PE teacher here at Rockland High School. This is not the normal attire for a PE teacher. Introduction was great, but it left out one really important thing. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. Now, if you've had a Rockland High School education, and I see a lot of former students and current students, that's a claim, right? I just made a claim, but the strength of that claim is only as good as your evidence. So how am I a failure? Well, let me give you some evidence. Growing up in the Midwest, a Catholic kid, my dream school was the University of Notre Dame. And so my entire middle school through high school life was making every decision I could to get into that school. That was my dream school. Well, my senior year, you know this time of year right now, some of you seniors right now, that rejection later came. Yes, they were letters at the time. That was school. Relationships. I had a girlfriend for 5.5 years. She's the reason why I moved out here to California. And one day, she up and doped me. Had an ex-relationship for 3 years. After that 3-year relationship, one day, girlfriend woke up, broke up with me. So not good at getting into the dream schools, not good at relationships. All right, must be good at career. Let's talk about career. I got hired as a head football coach at 23 years old in Los Angeles. You say, hey, see, Coach Kennedy, you're not a failure. Well, 2 seasons in, I got an email from the principal that said we're moving in a different direction. My next job, my next chance at a head coaching job, we went 0-10 the first year. We didn't win a single game, and none of them were that close. Okay, failure in professional life. This past December, right after the holidays hit, I don't know why, but I decided to jump on a scale. PE teacher, I guess, right? I decided to jump on a scale, and I didn't like the number. And I realized that, you know what? I'm not really that healthy, and I'm a PE teacher. Failure. So I would ask you to take a moment. Take a moment, think of the biggest failures in your life. I'm on a time crunch, so I can't give you too much time to think about it, but take some time to think about your failures and remember how you felt when you had those failures. In my experience, I think there's 2 big myths to failure. Myth number 1, that we should be afraid of it. It's a myth to be afraid of failure. And myth number 2, that we should be afraid of the judgment that we get when we fail. To me, those are 2 big myths of failure. So let me flip it over. I think there's 2 realities to failure. Reality number 1 is failure gives you a chance to show how badly you want something. We heard about that already. And reality number 2, failure can be the greatest teacher in your life. If you let it, failure can be the greatest teacher in your life. So as I reflect back on those biggest failures, some I've already mentioned, what I saw, and we heard this already, is those were some of the biggest moments of growth in my life. Those failure moments in my life. Biggest moments of growth. No failure, no growth. Okay, now I see a lot of young kids out here. This is a disclaimer. Don't go fail your math test on Tuesday and then come over, hey, Coach Kenny, I did what you said, failure, I failed that math test. And there's a lot of adults in here too. Don't email me and tell me you got fired from your job because you didn't do anything, okay? So that's not the failure I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about failing forward. Fail forward. So what does that mean? Number one, figure out what it is you really want. Number two, get out of your comfort zone. I say this to my students all the time. Get out of your comfort zone and relentlessly pursue that thing that you want, those things that you want. And then number three, if and when you do fail, take time to reflect. Reflect on those failures. Grow from those failures. Now, I'm speaking to the younger people here. I don't envy your generation right now. I really don't. Okay, I'm not going to pretend like I had it easier than you guys, or I'm not going to pretend that you have it easier. You live in this social media world, right? This Instagram, TikTok, this world, and there's this illusion of perfection. Right? There's this illusion of perfection. Nobody's posting their failures on their Instagram. Nobody's posting their failures on their TikTok, right? It's a filtered world. And then on top of that, every phone has a camera, so they can capture your failures. They can take a picture, they can take a video, and it's there for the world to see. So I don't envy you. And I didn't grow up with that. I didn't have that social media world that I had to deal with. But with everything I just told you, are you ready and willing to risk failure? As a teacher and a coach, I'm constantly challenged. They constantly say, think about what your core values are. Think about what your convictions are. What do you stand for as a teacher and a coach? And I swear we didn't plan this. At the top of my list is resilience. Resilience. What do you do? Or how do you respond to failure? Does it break you? Or does it grow you into a better version of yourself? So I'm going to close with a reintroduction of myself. Want to do that? Yeah? Okay. If you don't, we can be done. Okay. All right, hello everyone. My name is Tim Kenny, and I am proud of my failures because of the growth it has spurred in pursuit of being the best version of myself. Remember those failures I listed at the beginning? Well, my sophomore year, I applied to be a transfer student, and I got accepted to the University of Notre Dame. So I enrolled into Notre Dame. I attended there my sophomore, junior, senior year. I walked onto the football team there, and I graduated with an undergraduate degree from the University of Notre Dame, my dream school. And I saved 1 year of tuition from there, too. The relationships, the failed relationships. Well, I eventually found the love of my life. We got married in 2016, right as we moved up here to Rockland, and we have 2 beautiful children, a 5-year-old Colton and a 2-year-old Bailey. That job I got fired from via email. Well, I decided I wanted to pursue another coaching job, so I went to another school. That school is where I met my wife. In 2016, when we moved up here, I got hired as a social studies teacher and a football coach. I was quickly promoted to offensive coordinator, which is still my title here today. I still call the offense for the varsity Rockland football team. We've had a lot of success these last few years, and not just in the wins column. And the guys that have graduated and have gone on and played elsewhere and just been great people. But 3 of the last 4 years have been the section championship, and won the section championship in 2024. I actually see there's a picture on the wall over there of the section championship. This is not my classroom. And then this January, PE teacher, man, if you're going to preach it, you better live it. I started waking up at 5 a.m. every morning. I run a little bit over a mile every day. I now have this love-hate relationship with pull-ups. Every Tuesday and Saturday, I got to do 100 pull-ups. I have this love-hate relationship with this workout called the Murph. Tomorrow, if you go to Run Rockland, I'll be there at Run Rockland. I'm going to be running in that. And I don't know why, but a couple weeks ago I just stepped on the scale and I'm under 200 pounds, which is not a number I've seen since probably college. No failure, no growth. Be resilient, fail forward. And remember, failure gives you a chance to show how badly you want something. And failure, if you let it, can be the greatest teacher in your life. Thank you.
After the speaker, we're asking to take 2 minutes to get a few chairs for standing because the turnout was a lot better than I expected. So yeah, thank you guys for coming again. Yeah. Hey guys, thank you so much for your cooperation. This is great. This is like amazing. Thank you all for coming. Now we're gonna move on to our next speaker. So I'll have Linus SB Interlista.
Our next speaker is Daniel Mendoza, an early childhood educator, advocate, and working artist with over a decade of experience creating inclusive learning environments. He's passionate about integrating artistic expressions into education and is here to speak about the strength of resiliency and power in the arts. Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody for having me. I super appreciate it. This is not the slab. Let's see if it comes up. It do what? You were. Do him likes it. All right, thank you all for having me so much. I super appreciate it. What an awesome experience. What a great group to be a part of. I'm beyond excited to be here. This morning I actually got to present in Arizona virtually as well. So I kind of feel like I was prepared for this. I'm going to share some experiences, and resiliency is definitely on the table today. I'm glad that all the speakers, even though we didn't come together, we have this message for us, but we're going to bring this all together, and it's wonderful. So most nights, the child in this picture went to bed sad, angry, and reflective. Turmoil and torment really kind of were the center of my life. Because I had a family member who chose vice over their family. They decided that that was what was important to them and how they would move forward. But how I moved through that with the help of arts and use those experiences to create change is what I'm here to share with you all today. How we move through these things. But I knew I had options, right? I knew I had two options. I had multiple options. I knew I have. I knew this because I was fortunate enough to still have positives within my life. There were still positive things happening. Even though nights and weekends and things were filled with this turmoil and torment, there were still these positive things happening. The first of those positive things were my cousins. My cousins who immigrated here. It makes me a little emotional to talk about them. Who showed me the value of family, culture, and hard work. They came here, they worked in the fields, they provided for their families, and they encouraged all and everything artistic in me, especially education. The second one, I'll leave this one up here, was my mother. My mother's passion for music was infectious. She brought out this idea of artistic means, of engagement, of persistence. I was also super lucky because her love for music got her involved in the arts, in that lots of her friends were musicians. Lots of her friends were DJs, disc jockeys, radio hosts. So a lot of my youth was spent at concerts and shows, right? My mom would take me to shows, and I began to befriend Latin American artists. This is a shot I took when I was around 7 years old. I would get to sit in sold-out arenas on stage. This is like a shot. I was probably sitting cross-legged, probably maybe just laying out on the floor, taking pictures. Sold-out arenas, sold-out venues. And I would get to see this. And I would get to see these artists living their best life, right? Living their best life, and what got them there? The arts. that integration of music. They were out there, they were having fun. I was little, so I guess I was kind of cute then. And so they allowed me, right? Opened my arms. I got to go out on tour sometimes with these bands. They would take me through cities in California, and I get to experience the art. And again, the same thing from them and the same thing from my mother was education. I hope you're going to school. What kind of grades? That's what the first thing they would ask me. These are sold out arenas. We're backstage, right? It's what you envision in the movies, just like the lawyer movies, right? It's what you envision, but I'm 7, so I was a little shielded from that. I didn't always get to see everything they were up to. But the first question they would ask me is, how's school? These are Grammy award-winning artists, right? How's school? What are you doing in school? How's this going? So I knew education was my way out. I began to study music. I began to playing in bands, collaborating with other artists, expanding my worldview. And over time, my love for the arts translated into visual arts. I began painting. I began engaging in community events. I began studying art history and studio arts, cultural events. Over time, this deep down, I knew that I needed to continue in artistic expression. I knew the arts was my way out. I knew it was my avenue. I started going to community college. I started studying art history and studio arts, thinking that I could teach. I ended up taking a class, human development. And I got the opportunity to go to a Head Start preschool. And in that Head Start preschool, I saw just the creative minds happening, the creative expression, the ideas, right? The free-flowing artisticness that was happening in these children, right? Just their ability to understand and connect with the world around them, experiencing it for the first time. In that Head Start classroom, I realized I also went to Head Start as a child. I was a Head Start student, and I began to remember those teachers and remember what they gave me. I remember playing, right? I remember engaging. I remember taking time, and especially the arts, the painting, the collaboration with classmates. I worked through these ideas as I continued on with my work. This is one of my paintings. So as I kind of continued through my travels and those understanding of where children were at, I found that I could really connect with them. And I could really start to share these experiences with them and really kind of start to become a role model, giving them those people that helped me as well. I decided to start teaching preschool. So through early education, through community college, you can become an early childhood educator and become a preschool teacher. So I started teaching preschools. And I started working with these children and really kind of understanding what was happening, right? Working with these families, maybe we're on the lower social economic status, just like myself growing up. So I started thinking, what can I do? How can I help them see that there is more, right, beyond what's happening around you? A lot of their stories mirror to mine. I saw that in their experiences. I found that I could connect with them. Now, I want to invite you to take a second and think about your school. For those of you that are in school, for those of you that went to school, and think about those things that you remember from school. Do you remember taking tests? Yeah. Do you remember all those papers you wrote, right? Do you remember all that stuff? And as the kids are going to say yes, right? I love to tell yes. He remembers, right? He knows. Those are the things that are great. But as adults, think back to those things that you remember. Do you remember those things, those tests, those long papers? You remember the projects, right? You remember the fun things. You remember the things that were probably tied to arts in some way, whether it be visual, musical, dance. And so I found this connection, and I started to utilize the things that I knew, right? I love this picture because this is my little buddy, Tommy, and he looks exactly like maybe my friends that might have been into graffiti, things like that, growing up, right? So utilizing those skill sets that I had and those abilities that I had to start to bring that together for students, to start to help them understand this, to start to kind of relate the impacts that art and the ability to have multiple means of representation as we show our content knowledge, as we show who we are and how we're available to learn and what works best. Taking things that I did and utilizing them in the classroom, right? So if you saw that first picture, I'll kind of jump back to this one. You see the floor here. My wife is here and she's probably going, oh man, I remember that floor. And so, and myself, right? So thinking about, I'm utilizing those skills that I have as an artist and I'm translating those into the classroom with children. But why just these children, right? There's so many more things that we can do with other children. So I started to think about that. And I was like, I need to go bigger. Like I'm reaching these families in my community and I need to go bigger. So I kept going to school. I finished my undergraduate degree. I got my graduate degree and I started teaching teachers. I even went back to teach at the same community college that I taught at. And in preschool, I had the opportunity to teach in the same communities. I have had students that were children of my best friends growing up in school. So I started teaching teachers. I started getting involved in administration. I started to have the ability to share out, to work with teachers. So now not only was I impacting my students and the people within my group, but I was also impacting other groups. I was reaching those educators. This is the oldest hotel in Oklahoma City, and I got to present there to share out art and education, what that looks like, inclusion, equity. I have the opportunity now to work with the California Superintendent's Art Initiative as a county lead. So now not only did I have the opportunity to see arts drive me out from where I was at, from that turmoil and that torment, I have a seat at the table of helping decide what arts education, what impact we have in the state. I also work in the California Early Childhood Special Education Network, which also allows me to loop into more impact statewide. Right now, we are working on a strategic art plan for Placer County to implement and show our legislation, show everybody in the county the importance of art and what it can be for us. And I still get to make art. I still have that opportunity to make art. This is Recent Pro Show. I still have that time to be who I am and utilize my creativity and my skills to share out. Because art is a part of our everyday life. We're all artists. We're all doing artistic things from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. We don't think about it, but aesthetics, picking out our clothes, the things we like to eat, those are all art. Those are all art-based. Our movements, our lives are art-based. It's important for us to understand that. So I invite you, when you see the arts, things like this is arts, right? When you see those things, know that you're creating an impact. Know that the arts can provide that outlet. Maybe it's not you don't feel artistic, but others have that ability. We can utilize those skills to help children reach their maximum potential, and even more so, help ourselves reach that maximum potential. So that child who went to bed sad, who went to bed angry, was still reflected in knowing that I could get out of that I could pursue my dreams, reach my maximum potential, and do what I could to better further everything possible for children who were me, to help them see that escape. Thank you all for it.
That was an amazing speech. Our next speaker is by JT Ramalona, who is a British student at Cal Poly Slough, who majors in mechanical engineering. He enjoys expressing his Filipino background, and he enjoys skiing and hiking in his free time. He'll be talking about the importance of community in hard times. So, yeah.
I want you to think about your favorite Disney movie you watched growing up. For some of you, it may have been Lilo and Stitch. Others, Ratatouille. For me, it was Cars. In Cars, we follow the story of Lightning McQueen, a hotshot rookie race car who craves attention and bright lights. A race car who, at the start of the movie, ignores the advice of his pit crew and makes a crucial mistake. This leads to a three-way finish so close, it needs a tiebreaker race to determine the winner of the Piston Cup. And while traveling across the country to prepare for the Piston Cup, Lightning McQueen gets lost. And while trying to catch back up with his team, he accidentally causes chaos in the humble town of Radiator Springs on the empty Route 66. During his stay in Radiator Springs, Lightning McQueen endures many challenges and struggles. From preparing the destruction he causes within the town, to building lasting bonds with the town's residents. Lightning McQueen had found a community. By the end of the movie, we come to find a deeper, more complex Lightning McQueen. A character who's changed by the struggles he overcame and guided by the community who helped him alter his outlook on life. Now, I want you to think about your favorite Disney movie growing up. Each Disney movie follows the same pattern. It revolves around a main character, the struggles they face, the community backing them, some sort of resolution, followed by a self-realization in the movie. And just like the movies we grew up watching, we too have our own community, our struggles, and our own self-identities. Whether big or small, these factors all show up in our lives. And today, I want to discuss the importance of taking on not easy, but difficult opportunities. I also want to discuss the importance of finding the right community to help you shape your identities. I remember the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of high school. I remember diving into my notes app and drafting an argument to my mom about why I shouldn't take honors English. My mom, looking out for my future, urged me to take the class. However, I didn't see the point. I thought it was too difficult. I thought it was time-consuming. I thought that the summer work would drag me away from the fun my friends were having in the sun. And most importantly, because my friends thought the class would be too difficult, I too thought that the class would be too difficult. I didn't want to test myself. I didn't take the class. I took the easy way. I found that 3 key ideas heavily influenced my decision. 1, my clouded self-identity. I didn't hold true values and goals to allow myself to make decisions to who I wanted to be. 2, the community I surrounded myself with didn't particularly act in my interests. They didn't really look out for me. It's difficult to find true community without first finding out who you want to be. And 3, I was reluctant to challenge myself. I strived to just do enough. Enough was it for me. I couldn't wrap my head around the possibilities beyond the other side. The beginning of my high school years were rough for me, given it was near the end of COVID. I couldn't go outside much. I'm sure you guys have heard that story much before. And I was transitioning between hairstyles from the side part I had in middle school to the middle part to the haircut I have now. During quarantine, I tried skateboarding, and after doing many ollies, I ruined my shoes and socks and gave up. And I tried baking, and let's just say my mom only liked my dessert, well, because she's my mom. I had this lack of self-identity was discouraging me from trying new things, and in turn, causing a loop of uncertainty. And and I wasn't comfortable with the hobbies I had, and I was too scared to extend past my comfort zone to explore new experiences. I found one particular factor for my lack of self-identity. I found myself trying hobbies that my friends wanted to do. I was letting my community shape me. However, those who I surrounded myself with weren't those who I particularly wanted to be like. Between not knowing my own self-identity and feeling somewhat out of place, what was the root of the problem? Little did I know, the whole time, I lacked the drive to challenge myself. But why was challenging myself so important? Isn't it the goal of our lives to be stress-free? It is our human nature to overcome challenges. Without challenges, you seem to lack purpose and in turn identity. In my experience, I have found that encountering and dealing with struggle and challenge has molded me into the person I am today. The challenges we face create opportunities to make mistakes. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, and that's what makes each and every one of us human. For every mistake I've made, I have found an opportunity to grow. And the more mistakes I've made, the more I've grown and the more I've come to discover my self-identity. True self-identity doesn't come easy. The struggles you may encounter along the way may be extremely discouraging, and at times, you may feel like giving up. Trust me, there's many times I felt like giving up. Take giving this speech, for example. But between taking on the responsibility of taking on the speech versus my college life, I felt like it would be too much. However, as you can see, I am here now. When you feel like giving up, you must think about the reward on this other side. You must think about why you challenged yourself in the first place, whether that's to make someone proud, or to surprise yourself, or even just to take that next step in your journey. If at first you fail, give yourself some slack and try again. It may take time to see a glimpse of who you want to be, and there's no need to rush that growth. As I began to realize my true self-identity, I began to find the right friends for me. I found people who shared the same goals and aspirations as me, and again, I had let my community shape me. However, this time, I was shaped into someone I was proud of being. In my experience, having a community that shared the same goals and priorities as me has gotten me to where I stand today. For every mistake I've made and every fall I've taken, my community backing me has been there to pick me up and put me right back on my track. By the end of high school, I was challenging myself more than ever, balancing academics with extracurriculars. However, the demanding schedule felt rewarding. The challenges I was putting myself up against felt achievable because of my community backing me and because of my self-identities guiding me along the way. It's not impossible to do things you may feel are challenging, but with enough passion and perseverance, you all have it within you to accomplish whatever you set out to do. While the growth I experienced may be unique to me, I believe that there's potential for all of you to change and improve in your own ways. In Lilo and Stitch, we see Stitch grow to embrace family. In Ratatouille, Remy lives out his passion for cooking. And in Cars, Lightning McQueen discovers this community that helps it to be one of the greatest race cars in history. And just like the ending we see in Cars, we too will all overcome self-defining struggles with the help of our community. It's not a matter of if we will undergo these life-changing moments, but when it will happen. So, while I don't expect you all to undergo the crazy journey that Lightning did, I do hope that you all take a second to embrace the next challenge you're faced with on your journey through life, for the opportunities on the other side may set you on a highway of life you are happy with riding on.
Hey guys, it's kind of cool to be back. I used to be a student at Robin High School. I had Coach Kenny actually for my very first class that I had here. Not really a class, but like homeroom where you go in and you get your schedules. That was with him, so it's kind of nice to see him again. I had Miss Padilla for AP Lit for English my freshman year as well. So I think if this goes bad, you take away nothing from my presentation. My presentation sucks, you're not a bit of blame. Anyway, hopefully I can get my point across here. But yeah, like was previously mentioned, I'm a third-year computer engineering student at Cal Poly SLO. I really love it. I guess I'm the second engineer from Cal Poly SLO presenting today, which is kind of surprising. Let's kind of get started. Do we have the presentation? It is. Okay. Cool. I'm gonna kind of perform a little bit of an experiment to get started here. I promise I'll drive towards an actual point here, but I want you to think about what I'm saying, answer the questions I'm asking just to yourself. You don't have to share, but it will be for a reason, right? Is the Earth flat? Is it round? Or is it in a completely flat sheet? Obviously not. I hope we can all kind of agree on that. Second thing. Was the moon landing faked? Did we actually land there, or was it all a stunt? Were we just trying to show off with the Russians of the kind? Is the moon even real? You trust that? Is global warming a real issue to be considered about? Going forward, should we enforce policies that work towards solving it? Is it a problem at all? Do we be concerned? Is it natural? What about the radiation from our cell phones? We need to be concerned about all the waves that come out of these things. When we blow up our ears, does that damage our bodies? Is that something we need to be scared about? Should we be worried? I want you to kind of keep thinking about this. I'll come back to this a bit later. What about all the 5G towers that are being put everywhere? Is that dangerous? I heard that, it could cause cancer. I might need to be concerned about that. And vaccines, are they safe? Is it better to go with our natural immune response? Or first, should we trust modern medicine and take these vaccines? I'm not here to convince you one way or another on any of these topics. You're free to believe whatever you want. But my goal by the end of this is that your decision is based on all the data that we have available. I think what's interesting is that we're in a room full of very smart, very intelligent, rational people. But I think the stuff I talked about incited very different emotions, very different internal answers for all of us. How can stuff that seemingly has a correct, scientifically demonstrable answer, which you may or may not believe in, that's fine, how do we all have access to the same information and come to different conclusions on this stuff? Why do we believe different things, right? That seems a bit silly. We all have access to the same information. And we all end up pointing in different directions. based on the same information we've collected, we go in different directions. And I think that's a symptom of kind of the information inlet we are in our modern world. Sometimes I envy my parents. A long time ago, they kind of believed what was told to them. They didn't have access to the internet. They didn't have a constant news source being pumped into their brain at all times. I think it's so hard for us to say, I don't know about topics, because we do, in fact, know so much more. We're constantly being told new information. We're constantly being updated on what's happening in the world, and it makes it easier to form opinions. And as humans, we love forming opinions. Every time we learn something new, we meet someone new, we have thoughts about who they are, what we think of them. And I think what I've learned is that it's really, really dangerously easy to form opinions, and it's surprisingly difficult to form informed opinions, because it just takes a lot of bodies. And I think to kind of tie that into an anecdote, I want to talk about what I mentioned earlier, like radiation from our cell phones. Is that dangerous? Let's kind of explore that, right? In high school, not in high school, I've always been a very argumentative person. I think you can ask my parents, they'll kind of back me up on that. But my point there is, I always believed that something was safe or unsafe. And at the time, in high school, for example, with phone radiation, I didn't really have a way of backing that claim up. I couldn't really tell you why I believed what I believed. I believed that because the science of the time, the data showed me that. I believe the scientists that did the research and told me that, these devices are safe to use. But once I went up to college, I kind of learned what actually drove those decisions. And I'm not going to take you through like a full lecture here, but hopefully we can all explore the electromagnetic spectrum together. And by the end of this, even if you don't agree with me or come to the same conclusion as me, I hope you'll see my point, in that it's a lot easier to make decisions and feel confident in our decisions once we are more informed. All right. So there's two types of electromagnetic radiation. We have ionizing radiation, which is everything to the right of visible light, and non-ionizing radiation, which is everything to the left of that on that graph. And what even is radiation? We kind of think of that term and we think of the stereotypical nuclear waste that turns dogs into hideous monsters, that turns people into purple beasts, right? Is that what radiation is? Maybe, sometimes. But the idea of radiation is that it's just a transmission of energy, right? We have some source of energy that is moving, and the frequency of that wave, which isn't super important, like understanding all that now, is what determines what type of radiation it is, right? How can light from the sun power our homes via solar panels? It's just because the radiation from the sun, that energy that is being transferred is being captured, right? Instead of it hitting us as heat, we're using that same energy to power our houses. So, what I want to talk about here is ionizing radiation on the right. We know that's dangerous, and we actually encounter it every day. The bananas we eat have ionizing radiation in them because of potassium. Not enough to hurt us, obviously, but the x-rays from when we go to the doctor, all sorts of different scanners. Like if you got in one of those machines that scanned your airport luggage, that'd be not good. But we know that's dangerous. What that does is it takes electrons from atoms as it passes through them. It turns them into ions. It makes stuff different, essentially. And if that happens to your DNA becomes different, and you don't want that, right? You don't want random chance affecting the code that develops what you are and allows your body to build. But everything to the left is non-ionizing. That means that issue is not a problem. We could power phones next to us. We could have radio waves, the microwaves that we use to heat us up, the infrared waves that heat our homes, that heat the world around us from the sun. we could have that hit us, and we're not worried about losing those electrons. We're not worried about our atoms within us becoming ions. But that doesn't mean there's no concern. Many people are right to be wary of these electronic devices, to be wary of the radiation that we expose ourselves to. And that's because it all comes back to what I said originally. This radiation, this non-ionizing radiation, is just an emission of energy. And what is energy? It's heat, right? If you have something that's really hot, it's going to cause damage to you, right? So that's what we need to be careful of. We need to make sure that we're not exposed to a very high power radiation, so we're not in danger. In fact, that's how a microwave works. Eat your food. There's a radiation that's coming out. Essentially, it's light. You could think of it as light. And there's so much energy in that radiation that it heats up those water molecules in your food, and they move really fast, and they get hot. You can actually test it. It is the water that's moving. By putting just a block of ice in the microwaves, you can try that. It will not get hot. You're not going to melt your ice no matter how long you try. Anyway, our phones fall within this range. They fall within that microwave range, and also a little bit into that radio spectrum as well. So should we be concerned? Do we need to worry about how powerful these radio waves are? I mean, it's in the same category as microwaves, right? Microwaves are so powerful that they heat up our food that will cause damage to our bodies. But what we know so far is that we don't really need to. The specific absorption rate, which is defined by the World Health Organization, essentially defines how much heat a specific part of our body can endure before it causes damage, right? It's called SAR for short, specific absorption rate. And it's measured in watts per kilogram. It is measured over a certain part of your skin. The USA determines that 1.6 watts per kilogram measured over 1 gram of your body tissue is unsafe. There's a margin of error that they calculate for that, saying that's too much heat or too little heat. But that's the kind of line they draw. The EU is a little bit more audacious. They say you can get up to 2 watts per kilogram. Whoa, that's a whole 0.4 watts higher. Now, what do these numbers even mean, right? I'm saying numbers, you might not have any context, but let's kind of talk about that. So, who here was around back when LEDs weren't everywhere and we actually had incandescent CFL light bulbs? Can I see some hands? Great. Those bulbs tend to be, 60 watts standard, 100 watts, right? And remember, all of this radiation is essentially the same. The light from these lights is visible, but the radiation from our phones, from our wireless routers, is not visible. That's essentially the only difference. And these lights are emitting radiation with a power of around 60 watts. That's kind of standard. But if you look at something like the wireless router or our phones, we measure how much radiation they output in milliwatts, sometimes microwatts. A milliwatt is 1,000th of a watt, and a microwatt is 1,000th of that. That means even if I stacked up like 1,000 of my phones, not exactly because it's more than a milliwatt, but even if I stacked up like 1,000 of these phones, I wouldn't even experience the same amount of radiation than I might from a light bulb, right? And I think once you kind of get that context and understand how things work and why we make the decisions we do with these safety regulations, it makes these concepts a lot less scary. And you are right to still be concerned that this could be a risk. Science always evolves and continues to change. But I believe that context really helps us move forward. And now that we've kind of done with that experiment, once we finish that, I apologize if you already knew that stuff. I figured that must be very boring. But my goal with that is hopefully show you that now that we understand how SAR works, what the radiation from our phones actually means, it makes that topic so much less scary. It's so much more approachable. It's so much more easy to understand. And potentially, it allows you to make more informed decisions. You're less worried about the things that are happening in your life, and you're less susceptible to the fear that that may cause. Being in the know is a very, very powerful tool. And I think to pursue that knowledge, to be in the know, there's 3 things you have to do. The first, I think, is to always keep learning. I think a lot of us kind of check out. Sometimes we stop learning. After high school and in college, we work. That's exhausting. And then we go home and we relax. That's fine. But I think learning about the issues that happen in our lives that we're concerned about is very important. It's the only way for us to make informed decisions, and decisions that are based on reality. It's how we make sure that we're not hurting ourselves by doing something we don't intend to. And second, I think it's very important that you learn to argue with yourself. And I think this is really a secret to way argues with other people as well. If you want to win arguments, if you want to always be right, essentially, what you have to do is argue with yourself. And that means any stance that you have, any position that you have, try and prove yourself wrong. Put yourself in the shoes of someone that opposes you and figure out what would they say to say that I am incorrect, right? If I told you, hey, the Earth's flat, right? I don't believe what you say. Yeah, I'm sure they say that the Earth is round, but I have no evidence personally that supports that. I look around, I see a flat surface. I don't see the Earth bending. I've never walked in a complete circle and made sure I ended up at the same point, and I hope most of you haven't. You can't prove to me that's true. I can't prove it. But what if you could? What if you already had that argument with yourself and had a way to prove that the Earth is round? If you knew why we came to the decisions we did, that's an argument you win, not only with yourself, but with somebody else as well. There's a long time ago that we just didn't have this information that we do now. We trust the data that's in front of us. We trust that the Earth is round. But once upon a time, that wasn't the case. And third, I think the most important thing to make sure your informed decision is correct is to always believe that you could be wrong. I think just maintaining that idea, maintaining that thought in your head is what allows you to argue with yourself. It's what allows you to continue learning. And I think once we lose that feeling of, hey, maybe I'm wrong about this, it closes off discussion. Even if we were to talk about it with other people, it doesn't leave room for real information to be shared. That's kind of what triggers us to get emotional, to share anger and frustration instead of ideas. And with that, I hope you remember these 3 things. I hope you remember to always continue learning, always trying to learn more about whatever it is you're curious about. We have so many resources now. 2, continue to argue with yourself. Any position you had, any stance you had, if you feel like you're right, you should be able to win that argument against yourself. Prove yourself wrong, and then prove that wrong. And 3, make sure you don't forget that you too are probably wrong. We have so many thoughts. Oh man, this guy is so dumb. I can't believe he thinks that. You're probably dumb too. Thank you.
Thank you for the very kind introduction. This is Murti Guru. I also graduated from this wonderful high school, and I have Ms. Padilla to thank for my English education and Ms. Kinney to thank for my geography education. And again, like a rule, any mishaps you can. But yeah, today I'm here to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, education. But before I get to that, quick show of hands. Who here considers himself qualified to be a mentor? Nice, Mike. Okay. Now, who here wants to be a mentor? Yeah. And this is purposely broad, so. And who here considers themselves a mentor right now? Yep. So I want y'all to keep those answers in mind while I try to convince everyone why you should want to be a mentor. So I could stand up here and talk about all the benefits that mentees have from being mentored. From the facts that studies find that at-risk youth, when they have a mentor figure in their life, they are 20% more likely to go to college and graduate, 21% more likely to volunteer in their local communities, 30% more likely to participate in sports, clubs, or other extracurricular activities, or 29% more likely to participate in a leadership role when participating in those activities. But what's in it for you? Don't get me wrong, these stats are very important. And if this is enough to convince you that you should be a mentor, great. My job here is to. But if you're understandably a little more apprehensive and you need a little more push, hear me out. So first, let's define the word mentor. What do I mean by saying being a mentor? I mean, well, here's the Merriam-Webster definition. Or the top one. But it's a trusted counselor or a guide or a tutor and coach. I like to think of mentorship as a role model. Someone that your mentee can look up to. Someone they can learn from. And not just in an academic setting either. See, earlier I asked who here considers themselves to be a mentor already. Some of you raised your hand, some of you didn't, and that's okay. But I would argue that many people who did not raise their hand actually are a mentor without knowing it. See, I believe I became a mentor at the ripe age of 5 years old. What this felt like a was in my life. This is my kid's sister. When she was born, my parents told me that I was now a big brother. I needed to be someone my sister could look up to. Something kinda like... Oh, you see? So, but since then, I've done a myriad of different things. I've been a peer tutor, a classroom aide, a coaching instructor, a team coach, a camp counselor, instructional assistant, and a big buddy in elementary schools. But from all these experience, I've taken away one main thing. I walked out knowing that I wanted to do more. I had such a blast, and I feel like I learned so much from these opportunities. But I really had to break it down. What is driving me? Why do I enjoy being a mentor? And after some reflection, I've come to 3 main thoughts. Number 1, metacognition. Number 2, perspective. And number 3, fulfillment. So I'll begin with metacognition. Metacognition is the activity of thinking about your own thoughts. And I want to view this topic under the lens of teaching within mentorship. Now, earlier I said that mentorship doesn't have to be in an academic setting. And that's true. Mentorship extends to all facets of life. But part of being a role model is inevitably teaching, in one way or another, if you mean it or not. To you, it could be explaining that there's only 5 days in a week and 2 weekends and life is unfair because of that. Or it could be explaining that you need to stay in school. Well, one way or another, this is teaching in some capacity. And the really thing about teaching is it forces you to think about your own thoughts. To be able to verbalize your ideas, you must understand your ideas. And I'm going to explain this through a little hypothetical example. So, pretend you have a mentee, and they walk up to their friend, their peer, and they say, "You're a weakhead." Now this is, I think we can all agree this is a grave offense. You need to step in and stop it at its root. So, as a mentor, you step in and you just say something like, "You can't say that." Well, the mentee could respond with, "Why not?" And then you hit them with, "Because it hurts the other person's feelings." Very logical argument. And this conversation can go on and on. The mentee could bring up, "But I want." or the mentee could bring up he stuck, right? But the crux of this example is you had to think about her thoughts. Let me explain. When I think about not saying mean words to another person, I don't explicitly think, wow, I'm gonna hurt their feelings. I think not to do it, it just does. I think it's bad. I don't think about why it's bad, I just know it's bad. So I don't walk around insulting random strangers I walk up to, right? It's an implicit thought that I don't think about. But when I am forced to verbalize my ideas, to explain it, I have to break it down to its most basic components to be able to deliver it. Here's another example in a more academic setting. So I recently went to college for a biology degree. And recently I served as an instructional assistant for a genetics class. This is one of the lecture slides I gave to my class. I asked them, look at this pedigree. Predict the model of inheritance. Said it out loud. Gave some time, waited for anyone to raise their hand, volunteer, answer this question. For assembly, I got some blank stares. Okay. Give him a hit. Look at this one. This boss right here. Look at this. What does this tell you? Check. Got some more blank stares. Y'all are doing a great job. Yes, same like was that. But then I was like, okay, let's how about a leading question? Would this be possible if this was following an autosomal dominant pattern of inheritance? I asked them that under this specific cross. 25% of the class said yes, 25% no, 50% still remained silent. So, okay, I wasn't getting anywhere. There was only two options, yes or no. So, I ended up giving them the answer. I told them this is an autosomal recessive way of inheritance because you can see that both parents don't express the trait, yet they produce an offspring that does, and because they don't express it and they do, they must be carriers, and for them to be carriers, it has to be autosomal recessive. Long explanation. And I got some and some nods, and I was like, okay, all right. Some people may have learned. And then I got a question. Someone raised their hand. I'm like, oh, what's up? Like, maybe they wanted to add on, explain. They asked me, why autosomal? Why not sex-linked? Right? There's two ways of inheritance. It's not really core, but they asked me why not. And I went, oh, well, that's because... And I froze. In my head, I see this pattern, and I immediately think it's autosomal recessive. I don't think about the other possibilities, because I've seen this pattern so many times, I can brain it within me that this is autosomal recessive. Yet when the student asked me, why couldn't it be sex-linked? I knew the answer was no, it can't be. But I forgot why. Eventually, after a little bit of thinking, a little fumbling over my words, I was able to spit out a half-decent answer. But the point is, being able to mentor, being able to teach, it forced me to reckon with the ideas I already had. It forced me to think about the logic and the reasoning and the learning that I have done in my past and break it down to its most basic roots to be able to express it and explain it in a way that everyone understood. Albert Einstein once said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And this is very true. When you mentor or teach anything, you fortify your understanding of the topic. This is because to communicate things clearly and understandably and effectively, you must break down your complex thoughts into their simplest form. The cycle of breaking things down constantly into ways that you can easily communicate them is what drives this metacognition. You take abstract thoughts and you bring them down to a tangible idea that you can give out. This aspect of mentorship is something I love. Not only do I get to think about my own thoughts, but in proxy, I also think about myself, my thought process, my biases. And that leads me into my second point of perspective. I'll start off with another example. This past quarter, I've had the privilege of taking a course where I got to spend about 3 months in a second grade elementary class. And here I served as a mentor, as a classroom aide. I would go in once or twice a week, and I would assist the teacher in whatever they need. I often help the kids learn place values or phonics, or hear about them talk about bully. But it's a great show. But when it was time for me to graduate and leave the classroom, I decided I wanted to make a little educational game for my students. I decided I wanted to build upon the regular weekly coding lessons with my own game, because I've had a nice background in coding instruction. I introduced to you Mason the Bear, and this is a game I made with the main protagonist, the bear, being called Mason the Bear. Part of this game, very simple. Laws would come from right to left, and you control the bear, and you've got to dodge the laws and get to the fish, and your score goes up. I made this game purposely very simple, so I could explain the inner workings of my code. So I can walk through the students how I made this game and explain to them how they could potentially change the game, how they could alter it. They can make it harder, easier, make the log bigger, smaller, the bear bigger, smaller, change the colors, change the costumes. I wanted to show them that they have freedom to do whatever they want. So, great. I gave them a little talk, a little presentation. They were hyped by telling them go, and I walked around and I answered any questions if anyone had wanted to do anything specifically or change, or I was having difficult rope the game somehow. I didn't have walked around to help them. Corner of my eye, I see a meager hand get raised up. And this was a kid who raised their hand that I didn't have much chance to interact with in the past. He was a little quiet, a little more reserved, but he was always very diligent in his second grade studies. So I walked up to him and I asked, "What's going on?" He proceeds to show me how he got Mason the Bear to go out of bounds, avoid all the logs, and was getting infinite points. Stared at him. And he broke my game. And not only did he break my game, he had a higher score than me. I made this game. And I had a history of professional gaming. And he had a higher score than me. Now, my ego was a little touched. But what I took away from this is he was able to teach me a new thing about the game that I made to teach him. See, the topics of the word expert is a rather subjective word and could be its own talk on its own. But I consider myself an expert in this game. I made it. Yet, Fred, I'm not even call the kid Fred, he was able to teach me something, and he made a new discovery in a field that I consider to be an expert in as a second grade. Throughout my time as a mentor, I've gotten the privilege to meet so many unique and different people. And each of these people that I've met have their own unique stories and perspectives. From kids who had to wake up early in the morning to cross the border to get to class, the kids who are housing insecure, the kids who had special needs, the kids who did not speak English and were put into a classroom where the teacher only spoke English. All of these students had such a unique background, and they all contributed to their perspective. Once you take time to mentor and really take time to understand your mentees, and you will start to take in these perspectives. Once you take in these perspectives, you start to be more informed about your own perspective. You understand your privileges, your background, your culture that formed what makes you, you. You also start to realize that this world around us is nuanced. There are many different issues, many different topics that we can all discuss about, but in gathering all these perspectives, you start to understand there are so many different angles to approach the same problem to get to that finish. This is just a picture I generated of AI to show different people. But I want to say, Fred came into my game with the perspective of a second grader who was managing ADHD, lived in San Diego, loved game. He taught me that I thought of my game as a very linear project. I confine my thoughts within this red square into the confines that I created. He taught me that
maybe I should be looking outside of those clouds. Maybe I should be looking up there. And the last topic I want to cover is fulfillment. Fulfillment is pretty short, pretty squishy. Okay. Mentoring is fulfilling. It is by trade. Seeing your mentees run up to you after they aced their math test, or run up to you after they broke the longest sentence they've ever written, that feeling of joy, happiness, pride, it never gets old. At least to the teachers. Yeah. But when I announced to my classroom, of my previous example, that day I presented that project was my last day in the class, everyone got up, and there was a giant group hug, and they all begged me to stay. It touched my heart. And I wish I could say this was because I was such a great mentor. I did such a great job, and look at this kid, it's like, they loved me. But in the class that I was taking, there was about 40 other mentors, all placed at different schools. Unanimously, all 40 of these mentors had almost a very exact similar response from every classroom they were in when they announced they were leaving. This to me speaks volumes. Just by showing up, by playing with the kids, we are leaving an impact. It gives these kids someone to look up to. Someone to go to when life gets difficult. Someone to go to learn math or reading. Eventually, it became clear to me that the effort you put into mentorship, when you walk out of it on the other side, you will walk out proud. Proud of your mentees for what they've been able to accomplish, and proud of yourself for the impact that you've been able to leave. Those are just 3 of the upsides that I have from it. Now, I can go on and on about different skills I've been able to learn, leadership, communication, empathy, yada yada. But for me, my 3 main reasons that I personally love mentorship, what I stand to gain from continuing to be a mentor, is metacognition, perspective, and fulfillment. And I want to leave everyone with this. Some of you may have raised your hand when I said if you were qualified to be a mentor. Some of you might have not. I want to talk to everyone who did not raise their hand to tell them you are wrong. Being a mentor, you don't have to be an expert in any specific subject. You don't need to be able to teach at a high level. You need to be willing to show off. You need to be willing to be someone who can contribute and take in their perspectives and insights. You need to be someone who is caring, someone who is dedicated, someone who is willing to serve as a role model, and someone that is willing to inspire. Thank you.
So I want to begin with a question. It's rhetorical. You don't have to raise your hands or answer it. And the question is, what does this life preserver have to do with suicide? And the answer is actually everything. Actually, absolutely everything. And I need to give you some context and explain that on August 31st, 2011, I tried to kill myself. Tried to kill myself by jumping off the close by 730-foot tall Forest Hill Bridge. But thankfully, in response to a call, a first responder, interestingly, he made no contact with me at all. What he did was create connection. And because connection always creates hope, and hope always saves lives, I was taken off the bridge to an emergency room and then go spend 15 days in a psychiatric facility. Changed my life. And I didn't realize it at the time, this journey which continues 14 years later from mental illness and into the space of our birthright mental wellness. Now, I've been blessed to travel around the world and to share my story, which is incredibly humbling. And it surprises me that so many people want to have this conversation, but it buoys me. But today, on the TED stage, I have to make the confession. And this has been something that's really has been bothering me for a very long time. And that the confession is, I hate the term suicide prevention. I hate it. As a suicide attempt survivor, it not only does it not sit well with me, there's a certain transaction aspect to it. There's a certain negativity that's inherent. I've shown up at places and said, hi, I'm David Woods Bartley. I'm here to give a training on suicide prevention. And I've literally watched people's postures slump. Like, oh no, poke me in the eye. That's going to be closer than that. But what can we do? Because I love the intention. Like, I love the goal. Of course I love the goal. And I love the people that did, the millions upon millions of people, paid and not paid, who have committed every part of their being, their blood, their sweat, their tears, their money, their resources to slay this monster. But can we call it something different? And I didn't have an answer, so I wasn't going to complain, and had an epiphany. And it was happening when I was out walking my two dogs. I have a golden retriever named Percy, and of course I have a pug named Lexi. And we're walking along, and it wasn't necessarily a voice per se, but it was such a profound idea, thought, thing that I stopped. And both Lexi and Percy looked up to me like, yo, dude, what up? And here's what it said to you. They don't call this an anti-drowning jacket. They call it a life preserve. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then my mind just started to go down this rabbit hole. And then I'm like, wait a second, what else is there? And I'm like, wait, when you take part A to part B, when you sit in the driver's seat or the passenger seat or the seat in the back, and those two things come together and there's click, that's not an anti-crash belt. It's a safety belt. So in other words, these things that were created to preserve life, they're not named what they're trying to avoid, what they're trying to prevent. They're named for what they're trying to affirm. And I thought, wait a second. Can't we do that with suicide? Like, can't we change it? Can't we reframe the problem? And so, as you'll hear, I'm crazy about definitions. I'm crazy about quotes. Because I don't want it just to be my opinion. I don't have initials past my name like some of us here. So I went home and I looked like, okay, well, I know the definition of prevention. And I'll just go to the Cambridge Dictionary because English people know the English language better than we. And so I said, okay, prevention is intentionally stopping something from happening. Pretty clear. Okay. What's preservation? I honestly thought the universe was playing a trick on me. Because I'm like, okay, it can't be quite this perfect. Do you realize the definition of preservation is to take something of value and keep it safe? Like, oh my gosh. This is it. And so I don't talk about suicide prevention. That's not what I talk about. What I'm going to ask you to do, in every place I go, every business, every military unit, every medical facility, every kindergarten class to graduate school, every place I go around the world now, I'm going to ask you to become part of what's called Operation Preservation. That's what we want. And all good operations have to have a good tagline. You know what the tagline is? Make tomorrow possible. We can do this. But again, you may think, okay, dude, I'm tracking with you, but are you going to ask us to go out and buy a bunch of life preservers? No. You already have it. You were born with it. It's this thing called connection. We are hardwired for this. But again, what is it? Because it's a buzzword right now. It's a great buzzword. Now, this is not a definition, but it should be, because it came from Brene Brown. And if you've not watched her TED Talk on the power of vulnerability, please do. And here's what she says. I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, when they feel heard, and when they feel valued. When they can give and receive without judgment, and they derive strength and sustenance from the relationship. Some things deserve to be said twice. This is one of them. I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and they derive strength and sustenance from the relationship. Okay, if I had mics, I'd drop them all. What else is there? That's a simple way to talk about what we all want in life. All these amazing speakers, it's all about connection. Everything that we talk about is about connection. And my assertion, again, I'm not an expert. Just a guy, I'm 62 years old, just trying to make my way through life. To continue this hellness to wellness, my assertion is that there's only one emotion that comes when you're in the space of connection. Only one. It's the most important emotion of all. Can't live without it. It's hope. Not only is hold on, pain ends, you can't be well without hope. You can't continue to the next day without hope. But what is it defined as? Same dictionary. This again, I thought, this is amazing. The feeling. The feeling that what is wanted can be had. So let me try to duplicate as much math as I could up here. If you line up 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 people like me who've been suicidal, and you say you get one word to describe how you feel, we're all going to say the exact same thing. Hopeless. There's no hope. Okay, so then the converse must be true. If my brother, my sister, you sold this person who is suffering, not struggling, suffering, if I could give you an experience of hope, would you reconsider? Yeah, but you can't do that. You know what? I actually can, because I can create connection with you. And hope is the thing. We can live without love. We can live without faith. You cannot live without hope. And the thing is, nobody ever will kill themselves when they experience hope. You can't, by definition. Because the thing is, you ask those same 1,000,000 people who are suicidal, what do you want? People a lot of times say, well, you want to die. No, I don't want to die. I wanted my pain to end. Well, then what was going to have you kill yourself? Because what I believed, not what I thought, not what I felt, what I believed was that was the only way I could do it. What if I showed you something different? Okay, well, lay it on me, brother. That's why. But even a better, even beyond the academic definition, my beloved niece Brooke, who is so magnificent, my middle name is Woods, my family calls me Woody. She said, Uncle Woody, oh my God, I found this quote about hope, and I know you're crazy about quotes. Check this out. This is from Matthew on Twitter. I'm never on Twitter. Matthew, by his own definition, loves cats. So, okay. I don't have a tattoo. I may get this tattoo. Here's what he says. Some people think of hope as this delicate, ephemeral thing made up of whispers and spiderwebs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, a grid of cobblestones in her hair, and she just spit out a tooth as she rises for another go. That's hope. That's why people like me, if you can give me that experience, if you connect with me, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not. And the beautiful thing is, we can do this. This is so simple. We move away from this thing that has a negativity. I understand the power of what people are trying to accomplish, but can we please call it something different? We're all motivated by positivity. We tend to be repelled by negativity. Can't we? How about, this is my big goal, it's the great American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. One day, I'm gonna see a press release, and I say, you know what? We're gonna keep doing the work we're doing. We're gonna change our name. I live for this day. It's going to be the American Foundation for Life Preservation. And when you call 988, they now have these amazing people who man those calls. They call their crisis line. How about, hey, thanks for calling the Life Preservation though. What can I do? What can I do to help me feel supported right now? We can do this. And again, down the rabbit hole, I've been talking about connection for years. And I could not believe it when I started to do a little bit more research on life preservers. I've always talked about there's 3 methods that I'll share with you here on the way that we can create connection. Anytime, any place, anywhere, with anyone. If you want to give somebody hope, you can do it anytime you want. Anytime. You can do it. Do you know how many types of life preservers there are? There's 3. All based upon the amount of buoyancy that you need. How much support do you need? How much do you need to be uplifted? How much do you need encouragement and your proximity to rescue? I see the life bag right there, so I know I'm okay. I'm out in the middle of the freaking ocean, and I don't know when it is someone's going to come. Same thing with connection. Recognition, expression, and understanding. First thing, the reality is and there's at least one of you here, my brother and sister, who we see him, but you know what they believe? Not so much about what you feel, it's not so much about what you think. I wasn't going to kill myself because of that, but I was going to kill myself because of what I believed, that I was worthless, that I was stupid and pitiful, virtuous, all these terrible things. That's what I believe. One of my brothers or sisters are here right now, and what they believe is they're invisible. Like they don't matter. Where to see them? Looking good. Yeah, but that's somewhat ugly. So what you can do is recognize that. And you know what I'm going to ask you to do to not become good? Great. Remembering and using people's names. Please. Please practice. As Dale Carnegie said it best, to a person, the sound of that person's name is the sweetest sound in any language. We know what this is like. When someone says, yo, David, my God, it's so great to see you. And I didn't know you even remember my name. Just practice. So in a previous life, I was married to an amazing woman. My former bride, Deanna, is just, God, I hit the jackpot twice. And we ran an animal sanctuary, some of you may know of, just down the hill in Penrith. It was called A Chance for Bliss. And because of the mama bear heart of my former bride, we were end of life. We took the animals nobody wanted. So we did no adoption. And we were particularly fond of Boston Terriers. So you guys know what a Boston Terrier is? It's kind of like a Frenchie. Does two things really, really well, snores and farts. So we became well known, not just individually, but a lot of times shelters, when they had an animal that had no chance of being adopted, they would get us a call. So we get a call from the Sacramento Animal Shelter, Dr. Margaret Hunt, wonderful, amazing veterinarian. She said, hey guys, I got this female, she's gray muzzle, she looks like a queen. I can't get anybody to adopt her, and I can't put her down. There's something about her. Do you have room? We said, absolutely. Now, Dr. Hunt was a very tall, striking woman, and veterinarians are scientists, and she was a little bit stoic. She's not a hugger like me. So when we showed up, I was like, because she had been crying, and she was holding this pup, as I call all dogs. It was exactly the type of dog we love. And before I could say anything, she stepped forward, the dog in hand, and says, I've named her Ruth. To be honest, I thought, not super creative. And before I could make a fool out of myself, thank goodness, she said, I named her Ruth because I wanted her to have respect, understanding, truth, and honor. When I remember, when we remember and use somebody's name, that is exactly what we give them. And here's your homework assignment. We're in school. Next time you go out to eat, you're going to be in a relationship with that soul who's a server who's feeding you for about an hour. Every single time, not every other, not every third, trust me, I'm a professional. Every time that soul comes back to the table, use their name. Steve, my God, thank you so much. Hey, Mary, I need a little bit more condiment. Hey, Joe, do you have a favorite item on the menu? Like, hey, Jenny, how are you doing today? Then you text me. I'll give you my number. You tell me what happens at the end of the hour. It will blow your mind. You are. So a buddy of mine has really taken this to heart. But buddy Steve, I said just the other day, he said, oh, I know you were on a TED Talk. I got to tell you what happened. He said, my beloved and I went out to a restaurant. We had this amazing waitress named Sandra. Every time she came back, I used her name. I said, how'd it go? I said, check out what happened at the end. So he said, she came with a bill and I put my credit card down. Before she took it, she said, David, Sandra put her hand on my arm in like the most angelic way possible. And she looked at me and she said, thank you. And my buddy said, I thought she was thanking me for being a customer. And I must have looked confused, and she said, thank you again. And I said, Sandra, for what? And she said, for using my name. Because it was the first time in a long time I felt like I had a seat. Practice. You can save somebody's life. So that's recognition. Now when we're talking about expression, we got to let people know how we feel. Please. They know I love them. I tell them again. They know I messed up. Tell them again. They know all they got to do is pick up the phone. I'll be here. Tell them again. Tell them. Text them, write it, whatever the way is. It's okay. But the expression is so much we need because we don't feel like we matter. We don't. And connection, because you have the experience of feeling seen, heard, and now you have the experience of hope, you're like, maybe I was wrong. So until 5 years ago, August 31st of every year was the worst day of the year. I've worn January. I'm not a big fan of summer anyway. Kind of interesting. You know what my wife's name is? Summer. So we all have dates, situations, things that trick us. Bring up things that maybe we thought were on a shelf, come right back in our face. And so here's 5 years ago, August 31st, man, I'm a mess. I thought I had this thing, you know, I've been at a certain distance away and was doing therapy and meds and all these great things. And then like this day, like I'm just, you don't want to be around me. And so I go to the mailbox, like, and I'm